kind of sugar stuff that we see that goes on in our culture. Another diet that has been much in the news is the Mediterranean diet. People began to study this 20, 30 years ago, looking at the diets in a number of countries in the Mediterranean region, including the island of Crete, which I said where people are eating so much fat, and yet they're not having our diseases because their fat is good fat, and they're eating a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruits, fish, relatively little meat, some inclusion of dairy products, principally as yogurt and some cheeses, whole grain breads. Now, again, in looking, I think the Mediterranean diet is a good basic template that we could adapt here, because this is a diet that most people like in all parts of the world, relatively easy to prepare, very tasty food, interesting, and yet apparently very healthy in terms of low incidence of diseases in these cultures. I want to emphasize that the secret of good health in Mediterranean countries is not necessarily just diet. In those countries, traditionally, people had a lot of regular physical activity. There's very strong social connection in villages around food. I think it's possible to create your own international diet. I don't think there's any one right way to eat. I think we're all different, and nutritional needs change as you grow. But I think the principles of healthy eating are relatively constant. And whether you're eating Chinese food or Italian food, you can adapt those by using the right kinds of fat, the right kinds of carbohydrate, making sure you're getting plenty of the sources of micronutrients, and you can construct a diet that's interesting and that's satisfying and that will guarantee maximum health and longevity. Now, let me talk a bit about weight and weight loss. These diets that are out there, the crazy diets that everyone is on, the principal reason that most people go on these is not to promote health and longevity, it's to lose weight. I think losing weight is a national obsession in our culture, and I think the more we become obsessed about it, the more obese people I see in our culture. I don't think it's any great mystery why Americans are so fat. I think Americans are fat because they eat too much, and they eat too much of the wrong kinds of food, and they don't get enough activity. And the secret of losing weight is to eat less and to increase activity. And I think that the secret of weight loss also is not to do any drastic manipulation of macronutrients in the diet. It's not drastically lowering fat or drastically lowering carbohydrate. It's cutting calories across the board. You want to maintain 30% fat, 50% 60% carbohydrate, 10 to 20% protein, but you want to decrease calories that you're taking in, and you want to increase activity. And I'm afraid that's the basic formula. I don't think there are any magic solutions out there. That's what you got to do. Now, I'm very interested in the fact that in my lifetime, there has been a great increase in the percentage of obesity in our population. Why? What's happened there? I think a major reason is that people are less active. Despite all the fitness stuff, I think a large proportion of our population is more sedentary than they were when I was a kid. And I would say that a couple of things that contribute to that are computers, television, video games among young people. I think all of those have sucked young people into much greater immobility than when I was growing up. And I think people are also eating more in that they're eating more frequently. That is, people eat throughout the day. The explosion of snack foods is a relatively modern phenomenon, and if you look at those foods, what are they? They tend to be the very worst kind of carbohydrate. It's products made from corn, from finely pulverized corn or wheat, or potato starch, fried in unhealthy fat, devoid of the protective micronutrients, too high in salt. And that has become a pattern of eating in this country that I think really wasn't present before. It's interesting also to look at cultures in which obesity is rare. There's been a lot written about the so-called French paradox, why French people have lower than expected incidence of heart attacks than Americans, even though they're eating a lot of fat and animal foods. Actually, I think that's controversial. There's been, experts have said that the way that heart attacks are diagnosed in France may be different from here, that there's controversy about that. But where there's no controversy is that you don't see many fat French people. And it's a striking contrast when you come back to the United States from France. What are they doing different? They are eating, I think, much smaller portions than we are. They're not eating throughout the day. They're more active. I think, and until recently, they weren't eating the fast food in the quantities that we're eating. So I don't think there's mysteries there. What I do know is that it's vitally important for you to help children to develop good habits of eating. You know, habits of eating are developed early in life. They persist all through life. And children today are subjected to intense pressures from commercial sources, you know, from peers, from when they go outside the house to eat the wrong kinds of foods. What can you do? You can set good role models for them by eating healthy food yourself. You can help them see and experience that good food, healthy food, is not different from delicious food. You know, you really have to show them that. A very useful strategy is try to involve kids in food preparation. You know, if you like to cook and like to make food, I think from a very early age, if you let children be part of that process, the whole idea of preparing food becomes interesting. They'll want to be part of it. That's one way that you can help get this philosophy across, because, you know, you're really up against a lot of unhealthy pressures out there in the real world. Here we are in a new millennium, and I think it would be a great priority to think about eating well, and eating well for optimum health. People are going to be living longer in our culture, and it's worth thinking about how you want to do that. Do you want to arrive in old age with your maximum potential, with as few aches and pains and as good function as possible? One of the main influences on that is diet and how you eat, and again, that's the one that you have total potential control over. And finally, remember that eating is a source of pleasure, of social interaction, a source of cultural and individual identity. You don't want to slight those qualities about eating. So make sure that the optimum diet provides plenty of pleasure, that it doesn't interfere with your social interactions, that it doesn't cause any kind of dissonance in how you see yourself and the culture that you live in. It's got to all fit with that. And I wish you all good health and a long and happy life filled with many pleasurable eating experiences. Thank you. Now, I'd like to talk to you next about micronutrients, which are the elements of diet that your body needs, but in much, much smaller amounts, which are not sources of energy, but are also important to us. The first category are vitamins. You know, vitamins are substances that you've got to have in the right amount for optimal functioning of the body. The main source of vitamins is food. But obviously, there are many vitamins now available in supplemental form and many people taking them. And I think it's important for you to understand which of these you want to think about taking as dietary supplements. Vitamins fall into two categories: the water-soluble vitamins, which are the B vitamins and vitamin C, and the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamins A, D, E, and K. These occur in many different foods. They have different functions in the body, mostly aiding in metabolism or protecting body membranes of cells and other structures. Let me start with the water-soluble vitamins. B vitamins are widely distributed in foods of animal origin and in many plant foods as well. I think probably you can get the B vitamins you need from a diet if it's reasonably well balanced. I take a B complex supplement every day. The main reason I do so is to make sure that I'm getting enough of one B vitamin called folic acid or folate. This is probably another one that is deficient in the diets in most people in this country. It was much in the news fairly recently because if women are pregnant and in the very early stages of pregnancy are deficient in folic acid, this can result in very serious fetal abnormalities of the central nervous system, conditions like spina bifida, for example. And the problem is that this happens at a stage where women generally don't know that they're pregnant. So it's strongly advised that all women who are potentially going to get pregnant make sure that they're taking folic acid as a supplement as part of a B complex. But there are other reasons here. Folic acid is a major regulator of an amino acid called homocysteine, which is a breakdown product of animal protein. And high levels of homocysteine in the blood are being found to correlate with not only with cardiovascular disease, but possibly with many other chronic diseases. This is an independent risk factor for heart attack and arterial disease.